So, I really want to tell you guys about my interviews. So here I am, trying to finish this video. Oh my god, it is taking me forever. I'm just learning to walk. Hi, hey, hello. I have been trying to record this video for about 3 weeks. If it wasn't one thing, it was another, trying to knock me down from doing it, but I'm doing it now. Nothing's stopping me. I'm even doing it in my daughter's room because the neighbors are cutting their trees down and it's super loud in my room. So yeah, my battery died. My son took my memory card, so I used a different one and I talked for like 40 minutes and then it was too small and recorded like a minute. And what else happened? We had workers in here, we got our windows replaced, and I couldn't find a space where I could just be alone, and just been busy. Just been crazy busy. So I really want to tell you guys about my interviews. So the last video I made, I told you I was going to interview to be a flight attendant. And I did an interview to be a flight attendant. I went to an interview, a face-to-face interview that had about 40 people show up. They were all invited. I had done a video interview. They called me back and they said, hey, we want to see you in person. Please come to our event. And so I said, okay. So I found the cheapest flight I could, and well, I didn't find the cheapest hotel, but I found a cheapish hotel and spent a little bit of money and went up to this interview. It was a stressful experience. I practiced. I had like everything that I wanted to say. I knew a lot about the company. I had my outfit, which I ended up not really liking, but it was fine. And then the night before, I got to visit with my daughter, which was really fun. I'll put a little footage of that on. And then that morning, I got up. It was cold and rainy, so I called an Uber, and my hotel was just a few minutes away from the location where the actual interview was. So I Ubered over there, and then so the start of it was everybody was kind of waiting outside this room and kind of chit-chatting, introducing themselves to each other, and something kind of funny happened there that I'll share in a minute. But they opened up the doors and we all signed in. We signed in, got our name tags, and gave them our resumes. And then we all went in and everybody just sat wherever, and we all just started talking to each other and introducing, and it was kind of funny because when I first walked up to the main group, I felt like there's like this swarm of people that came and like introduced themselves to me. I was like, oh, hi, wow, you guys are really friendly. And then when we sat down at the tables, one of the girls that I had talked to outside, she goes, I thought you were a recruiter because I had that airplane pin on. I think I talked about it in my video, but my dad was a pilot and he had a little airplane pin. And so I thought I would wear that. I thought it would be like a fun little touch. Well, all these people thought that airplane pin apparently made me a recruiter. And so that's why they were swarming me. They didn't really care about me. So, but that was funny. And it turned out like no recruiter said anything about the pin. So, yeah, that was a big, like, whatever. But anyway, so, this whole process was like, we did a little group activity just among our group. And then we had to do another group activity where we went up in the front and presented our like answers. We like worked together on these answers, and then each one had to talk about one. And then we basically just waited around. We talked to a lot. There were a few flight attendants that were part of the recruiting team, We were able to ask them questions while we were waiting, and then some people went out for a separate group interview, and some people were called for their one-on-one. So I had my one-on-one first, before my group interview, and it was a little later in the morning, so I had some time to just kind of chill out and of course obsess. And so everybody was really nice. There were some older men and, well, there weren't really any older men. There were a few older women, mostly young, I would say. I would say mid-20s. I would say was pretty much the age range. But there were a few of us that were a little older, and just a handful of guys. I feel like there were only like 6 or 7, 8 guys, maybe. And so then I had my one-on-one, and it was actually really great. I felt really comfortable. There was a few times where after I answered, I was like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have said that. That was kind of weird, or I didn't seem very sure of myself. But what can you do? You spit it out and then it's out there. Then my group interview was until the end, the very end of the day. Thankfully, they were ahead of schedule, so they called us in early, but I was exhausted and I was starving, and I think I was getting a little sick because I thought the room was freezing, and everyone was like, no, it's not cold. You're just, something's wrong with you. No, that's backwards. I thought it was hot and everyone else was freezing. But anyway, so I go into my group interview. This was literally the hardest thing I've ever done. We all sat in a little semicircle. First thing we had to do, which was, I'm sure, an icebreaker, you stand up and you talk about your dream vacation. If you've already taken it, then you talk about that, or where you'd like to travel, and or if you could travel anywhere. I don't know. Anyway, so that was kind of the first thing, which was fine. And then each person got a card, and you had to hold your card and then flip it over when it was your turn, and then answer what was on the card, like that. And they were all scenarios about a customer service scenario, this happens, how do you respond? For example, if you're a hairstylist and somebody comes in for a haircut and you cut it way too short, and they're really pissed off because their hair is now too short, and their husband hates really short hair, and they're going on this big date tonight, and what do you do? So stuff like that. And the hard part wasn't answering the question. The hard part was that you would say, say that was my question, I would say, well, I would of course offer them a discount, or if they were really upset, maybe offer them extensions or something like that we could maybe make it a little bit longer. And then they would, pause for the response of the team, and then the team would come back, well, what about this? Well, what about this? And they would throw these different situations at you, and that was really hard for me, because I felt like I backpedaled, and my question was really dumb. I don't even want to say what it is, but it was really dumb, and it was kind of one of those ones where you just there's really not very many directions you can go with this. It's you could do this or this. The end, you can add, they tried to add a little bit into it, but I seriously felt like I was just kind of up against a wall, and I kind of wavered on my answer. I answered it one way, and then they threw something at me, and I kind of switched directions, and so I feel like they didn't like that. So I really felt like I fell flat, and I was only the third person in line, so then I had to sit there and wait for everyone else and hash it over in my head, so that was really painful. So then that happened, we went back to the room, and then basically just waited, and they would call people out one at a time and either say, go upstairs and get your drug test, or peace out, yo, you can apply in 6 months. And I was the second group. So it's interesting. I really felt prepared except for that scenario thing, which I would definitely recommend. I don't know how you practice for that, other than you have to stick with what you say. And if you're gonna say, I would offer them a refund, and then if someone says, well, what if they're this, then you have to kind of go along that same line. You can't be wishy-washy, because if you think about it, if you are on an airplane, like, you don't really have any like buddy to lean on other than your other flight attendants. You have to make these decisions and you have to stick with them. And so I felt like that's probably where I kind of messed up. But I don't know. I mean, I also felt like maybe I wasn't quite young enough. I do feel like they were kind of looking for like the younger crowd. I'm pretty sure the 5 or so that I know that got chosen to move on were in the like mid-20 range. So, c'est la vie. I was fairly upset, but I think I also didn't feel good. I think I was coming down with something. Not that that matters, but I was like, I was just like, I just felt like I had everything sucked out of me. So I was a little more upset than I thought I would be. I think I had just, I'd been preparing for a month for this interview. And so pretty much, all my time invested in that. So yeah, I was a little sad. So I came home and was feeling, yucky for about 5 days. I pretty much just had no energy, no will to do much of anything. And so there was another kind of an open invitation interview on, that was on a Thursday, and the next interview, open invitation interview, was on a Tuesday, the next Tuesday night in the evening. And it's about 3 hours from where I live, and so I was kind of debating, like, I didn't have to let anybody know if I was coming or not, so I was kind of debating back and forth, should I go, should I not, like, what should I do? And I reached out to some people online to ask their opinion, and they were like, what could it hurt? It could just be more experience interviewing, which is true, because I've literally had like almost no experience interviewing. I think that first airline interview was probably my second like official interview I've ever really had to have in my life, except for maybe my first job ever. I'm just learning to walk. Alright, hey guys, I am going to finish this video. It is the next day from the time that I started the initial one in my daughter's room, but apparently it cut off. I don't really know why. I need to learn how to use my camera, I guess. But I wanted to finish my story. So, I think I was at the point where I was deciding if I was going to go to the second interview. So I was still kind of getting over being bummed about the first one. I had invested a lot of time, and I kept going back and forth, flip-flopping if I wanted to go or not. Just a few different reasons. Like, I didn't know a lot about the airline, yeah, I don't even know exactly why, but I think I was just nervous to get knocked down again, and didn't want to spend a bunch of money. I'd spent a bunch of money going to the other interview, and I didn't want to spend a ton of money. So I decided pretty much the day before that I was going to go. I got a hotel room at the place where the interview was being scheduled, and I drove up. So I saved a little money there, and I got there a little later than I wanted to, and I pretty much just went straight to my room and got ready for the interview. You were supposed to check, it started at 6 and you could check in starting at 5. And I was starving, I hadn't eaten, so that was interesting. But I practiced you're supposed to do, well, let me get into that. Let's not skip ahead. So basically you sign in, they measure your height, because this particular airline is a regional and the airplanes are smaller, so you had to make sure that you aren't too tall, and then you had to also make sure you're not too short, because you have to be able to reach. So I cleared that, and then they take your resume and you go sit down and just kind of chit chat with everybody until 6 when they start. And then this was completely different setup than the first one I did. One of the recruiters went up to the front, welcomed everyone, and then basically just said, went through all the details of kind of what it meant to work for this particular airline. and you know, certain requirements as far as like tattoos and relocation and all that kind of stuff, just to kind of get it in people's heads, because I do feel like there were quite a few people there that had not researched at all. You know, they didn't really know what they were getting themselves into. So I think it's for those people to be like, you know, are you sure you want to do this? Like, it's a huge thing. And you know, the whole tattoo thing, like they're very particular about tattoos and stuff. So that was a big thing. And a few people had to leave. Some people, for different reasons, they had to leave because of work. They had, you know, they didn't realize it was going to take so long. And then one guy was in process of getting a tattoo removed, but they said you need to come back after it's already done. So so then the rest of us, after about 15 minutes, we sat down, and in the order that we got there, that we gave our resumes, they called us up one at a time. Hi, you want to be in my video? You want to be in the video? They called us up to do our 60 seconds. Why, what, now I'm blanking. What, please don't get on the computer. What would make me a great flight attendant, or why I would make a great flight attendant. And so thankfully I kind of knew like that was coming, and I had practiced, and it was definitely, I mean, it was an advantage and a disadvantage because 1 minute is really short, and so mine was like pretty much concise to the minute, and a lot of people just like got nervous and kind of rambled and, you know, said weird things. And so so once everybody finished that, but I felt really good about mine. I felt quite confident. And once everybody did that, then they sent us out, and they took about 45 minutes to go over everybody and decide who they wanted to call back for a one-on-one interview. And so there were, I think there was probably somewhere between 30 and 40 people to start out with. Really? Really? Seriously. And then there were 18 people on the list when they called us back. So they put up a list, kind of like a callback at a audition. There were 18 people, and so everyone else had to kind of leave, and it was kind of sad. But and then they called one of us in one at a time to have a one-on-one interview. And so yeah, so I was near the end. I was one of the last 3 people to go in. So by that time it was like, I think it was like 10:15, 10:30 at night. So I was exhausted again, and really, really hungry. I ate like a $3 protein bar, so I was starving. And then, but I had my one-on-one, and I felt really good about it. Like, there wasn't anything like the first one where I kind of felt like, shoot, like, I do remember in my first interview with the first airline that there were a couple questions where she would ask me something, and I would say like, I don't really know what you're looking for, but, you know, so that's probably not a good thing to say. So for future reference, if you are going to interview, don't say, oh, I don't know what you're looking for, but I'm gonna just throw this out there. What do you think? Do you like it? No, that's probably not a good method. So I got rid of that, got that out of my vocabulary, and then I just tried to be super honest, super upfront and relaxed. I tried to be a little funny. A couple of things, like I think one of the questions was something about like, what do you think the biggest challenge would be for you starting this job? And I said the sleep. Like, I am super like ingrained in my schedule. I've been getting up early and going to work early for a really long time, and going to bed like at 9 o'clock at night for years. I mean, literally years. And so I think that, I think he thought that was kind of humorous. And then he was like, that's a legitimate concern. He's like, because you will have to adjust to, like, sometimes when you wish you could sleep more and you just can't, you're working. So, anyway, I felt really good about it. I was super stoked because I met some really, really nice people, and then they tell you, hey, go home, you got 2 weeks, we'll let you know. So I had heard different stories, 2 weeks, 2 days to 2 weeks to 3 weeks, and so yeah, I pretty much like obsessed for the next 2 weeks over it. And then some girl had said it had been 3 weeks and that it was actually 2 weeks of business days, which did not make sense to me because I don't know why they would say it that way, say 2 weeks if they meant business days. So I was kind of iffy on that, and so I had kind of resigned myself to wait longer. And then it was getting to be the afternoon of the day that it was exactly 2 weeks, and the email popped up, and I was washing the dishes, and I was like, I have my notifications on, which I never do, and I was like, oh, and I looked, and I saw that it was from the airline. I was like, oh, I don't want to look at it, I'm so scared. And I had a good feeling, but I was like, I don't know. I mean, I had a good feeling about the first one too, and that one went downhill. So I took my phone into my husband. I was like, I don't want to open it, help me open it. So we opened it together, and congratulations, it said, you are invited to flight attendant training program, school, whatever, and starting on March 7th. And I was like, oh, so excited. It's funny how you don't realize sometimes how much you want something until you don't get it or you do get it, and I was just ecstatic. So that was on February like 13th, I believe. Yeah, 13th. And so basically I had about a little less than a month to prepare, to get ready, to get all my stuff together, and I have been obsessing. They sent me about a week ago stuff to study, so I've been studying and practicing. But yeah, so that's my interview experience. And I will say, like, for me, because up until this point, I've really only ever like done a legit interview once. All my other jobs, I pretty much had the job, and like the interview was more of just like a like something that they just did, you know, kind of like because they felt like they needed to have that in their records. So and maybe that's why it hit me so hard like the first time, was because I just kind of like, I mean, maybe it's my ego. Like I was like, oh yeah, I got this, no problem. And I didn't have it. So definitely a great learning process. Just to be honest, I did apply to quite a few airlines. And a couple I didn't even pass their assessments. One is very strict on tattoos, and I do have a couple of tattoos. And one I've never heard from at all. So I did 2 video interviews. One ended up with the first interview, and then the other one they said no thank you, which I wasn't surprised because that was my first one and I didn't feel super great about it. But this process is, it takes it out of you, and if you are willing to stick with it and want to do this job, I recommend, I would say, hi, welcome back. I would say a couple of main things I would give as advice are research. So learn about what you're applying for. Learn about it a lot. Like, there's a lot of information that can be found. YouTube has been a wealth of information for me. There's a few blogs. There are, and then there's Facebook pages. So my second piece of advice, if you decide to move forward, is to be patient. And I know that's kind of hard to imagine, but I think you have to like view it from the standpoint of those people that are getting your emails, getting your applications. Some of these companies are receiving thousands, I mean tens of thousands of applications. So they have to, you know, wade through those. And I know some of it's electronic, like they, you know, weed out ones that don't come up with keywords and stuff. I know that's how like some of the bigger companies do it. But, you know, imagine if you woke up with, I mean, even just 100 emails asking you to do something. And so you have to give them time. And I do believe, I do agree with the people that say no news is good news. So try to give it some time. I mean, I've heard of some people waiting over 18 months to hear back. So, you know, don't go quitting your job just because you applied. Like that, that kind of scares me. Like, so just try to wait it out. Find something to keep you busy. Find a hobby. Start vlogging. And then my third piece of advice is to not give up, I guess. I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but if you really want to do it, and say you get those no thank you emails, it's okay to feel bad and feel bummed and wonder what you did wrong, but you can't live there. And if it's meant to be, then at some point it will happen for you if you push forward and really want it. And you've got to adjust, you know, you've got to think about what you did, bounce ideas off of people, find people you know that have done interviews that know. Go to Toastmaster classes, learn how to do public speaking. Ask the people, all the flight attendants on the Facebook pages love to help. They love their jobs and they want to help you succeed if it's really what you want, if it's really in your heart. So, you know, take that moment, let yourself feel the being bummed for not getting it, and then move on, move ahead. You know, maybe there's something better. Maybe there's a better airline. Maybe that airline that you love so much that said no, maybe you just need to give it some time and learn more about like what it takes to be that that employee that they want. So that's it. I hope that you guys like this video, and if so, subscribe, thumbs up, and I would love to give you any insight I can. I mean, I'm not like super seasoned at this, but I would love to help anyone who wants to know like what my experience was, more specifics on interviewing, and yeah. So my next video should be about training. I'm hoping to do training videos. We'll see how it goes. I don't know if I want to bring this big old camera though. Apparently I don't know how to use it very well. So yeah, all right. See you on the flip side.